Hi, everybody. I am here again today discussing extraordinary experiences. And my guest today is my dear friend, Benny Boyd. We were in the same graduate cohort together in ecopsychology at Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. And Benny and I got to know each other through the program, and she knows about some of my experiences and recently volunteered to share some of her extraordinary experiences. So I brought her here today for this very reason. Thank you so much for being here, Benny. Glad to have you.
It's my pleasure. This is a thrill. It's super affirming and exciting, and I just appreciate you being interested. So nice
Absolutely.
to be able to talk about stuff.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate again that the reason that I'm doing this is to normalize these experiences rather than pathologizing them. They are normal, they are ubiquitous, they are ancient experiences, and we just don't talk about them in the West because it's kind of taboo. So I'm a sacred cow chipper, so I want to bring this stuff up to the light so people can see. So you told me, we've talked a little bit before recording this, and you shared with me some 3 incredible experiences. And I'm hoping that you'll start out with the first, which sounds very much like a Peter Pan experience. So go for it.
Okay. Please feel free to jump in and cut me off at any point that you want. Yeah, so the first one happened when I was very little. I must have been under 4. And it's my earliest memory, I think, of something extraordinary, which at the time felt normal. I woke up in the middle of the night and the moonlight was coming through my window, and I had this really swank blue, like false wood wall covering. It was really hot. And the moon was casting a shadow on the closet door across from me that had elaborate detail. And I could tell that it's so hard to explain these things because they're so unbelievable, like in the moment, they're so believable and so obvious, but to tell somebody else, you're like, you're not going to believe this. But so I'm going to try to not embellish it because I have like such a force of energy that wants you to have my experience in it.
But you know what, Benny, that's what I want. It's your story from your perspective. Doesn't matter. So you just say whatever you want to say.
Okay. So I woke up and there was, as if there was a picture frame on the wall across from me, there was a shadow forest. It was really a shadow jungle on the wall across from me. And so I remember sitting up in bed. It's funny because even now I have sort of a non-ordinary way of remembering it. I can see myself, which at the time I felt like I could see myself in bed. I was aware of me being in bed and the wall across from me and seeing it all, like as if I was watching the whole scene.
Yeah.
But I had this like laser focus on what I was seeing, and it was this incredible jungle. It was this beautiful jungle and the lush tropical floor, but all in silhouette. It was all shadow.
And just for clarity, was there a forest next to you or something that would have?
No.
Okay.
Back Long Island.
Okay.
The most concretized urban jungle you can think of.
Got it.
And so I saw these big, beautiful trees and vines hanging down. And then all of a sudden, I saw this man just flying on a vine through the tableau I was seeing and land on the jungle floor and like disappear into the thicket of like whatever these plants were, all the foliage. And then he stood up and started running across the picture. And I was like, glued to it. And he saw me move and he turned around and looked at me and went, and just stood there and stared at me. And I was like, we were just locked gazing at each other. And then he just stopped, looked at me for a minute, turned around and just kept trucking and then just left. And I just sat there like, Mom? It was extraordinary and not. I was excited as a little person. I was so excited, because in my mind, I knew these things existed. It made sense to me that he would live in my closet and there would be a jungle there. But then I spent the rest of my life looking for him to come back and I never saw him again.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought, but I also at the same time knew he was there. There would be nights that I would wake up and be like, oh, I'm going to see him. And I just couldn't, I would like look for the moonlight and, try to figure it out. And I would never actually see him. I would just know he was there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Just for a little context, can you tell us maybe your religious upbringing, if you had one?
Catholic, Roman Catholic.
Did your experience, of course you were 4 at the time, but now in hindsight, did your experience, was it in conflict with what you had been taught through religion? Did you struggle with it over time, I guess is what I'm looking for.
It's such a good question. No, that's funny. That was top of mind when we started our session today. I wanted to even ask you about that because later I'm going to tell you about mediumship experiences that I had and like spontaneous intuition. And I only recently found out that that's in conflict with my religion. I never knew that was an issue. And my parents were pretty into the Catholic Church. My dad was, I'm going to say it wrong, I feel like he was a deacon for a little while. He was really, my parents taught pre-Cana and CCD and they started a youth group and, I never knew that.
So you didn't, you didn't struggle to reconcile it, which is great.
Yeah.
Because then you can just still hold on to it. Most of us through religious upbringing, we tend to see those things in the past and dismiss them and say, oh, that was just my 4-year-old imagination. That wasn't real. But
I did that.
Oh, did you as an adult or just at some point?
I learned to minimize those experiences as just sort of like everybody has them. That's what a fertile child like mine does. And it is your job to grow out of that and shut the door on those ways of being. And come into like, I then later like felt the pressure you have to perform and get degrees and go to school. And, when you're, we were talking about this beforehand, I had several careers. One of them was to get a graduate degree as a physician assistant. And I graduated summa cum laude. I was drinking the Kool-Aid, like reading the science, and there's no space in those worlds to be like, and when I was little, there was a little jungle man who used to come visit me. Doesn't fit, it's not accepted. You're being trained to a very specific way of thinking. So
which is very limiting and sad because we do dismiss that kind of stuff. And yet it's just another part of our experience and it's beautiful.
Totally. And more importantly to this point is like, it's a valid and valuable part of my healing skills that it took me another 30 years to come into like being reaffirmed for like, wow, your intuition is amazing. And that has helped me so much more with my patients to be able to go straight to intuition and say, what's really cooking here? And then take my medical skills and come in and like prove it and say like, yeah, this does make sense. And I can show you that way. Now I struggle with wondering if my Western mindset is valid at all. That's my new like thinking is that hindering me in some way?
So I don't want to spend too long here, so I definitely want to come back to your more of your experiences, but I would just say that it's sort of the difference in the masculine and the feminine. With the masculine being very narrow focused and the feminine being very big picture. Feminine is very intuitive. Masculine is not. It's very rigid. And there's nothing wrong with the masculine view. It's part of the whole. I think that, I know that our issue now in trying to reconcile these things, especially, is we are so far out of balance with the narrowly focused masculine perspective that there's not been the feminine to bring it in and balance it out. And both views are essential to the whole. We have the science and we have the intuition, and they can work together. They're part of the same thing, so they will work together.
Right. That's well said. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad that was easy to understand. Okay, so yes. Oh, and just for a little bit more clarity, you are a physician's assistant. You also have a pardon? What'd you say?
It's physician assistant. We don't technically assist physicians. It's a little joke in our
Oh,
community because everyone calls us physician's assistant, which implies that we assist physicians, which it's important to us that for some reason, we don't assist physicians. It's such a stupid, but
you can do everything but surgery, right?
What's that?
You can do everything but surgery.
Oh, you can do surgery as well. It's just illegal. Each state is a little bit different about what your relationship with a physician has to be. You have some kind of supervisory relationship with a physician.
So you've been immersed in the sciences. You've been immersed in a very narrow world view sort of way of looking at existence. And I love that for the purposes of this conversation. You're highly educated. You're a professional. You have multiple degrees, and you are a critical thinker. And yet, lo and behold, you still have these experiences as well.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's just part of our existence. So I love it. Let's move on to the next one. Give me what you got.
I was feeling some like, oh, how do you make sense of it? How do you come up with a chronology? And it doesn't really lend itself well to that, which I want to honor. Like, it was just, in my experience of things, just a series of unrelated moments in time of things just happening to me. So I think what stands out to me is like how I started developing psychic knowings, especially around my sister. We had a lot. In fact, when we were young, we were on car trips, we would practice it. I was fascinated by it. And I would always, we'd spend hours going camping in the car. And I would say, what color am I thinking of? What number? We would just like always try and like heighten our intuition. And I look back, and now that I have, as an adult, taken on trying to improve my psychic and, mediumistic abilities, realize that's actually really good training. That was solid practice on our part. And it really did enhance our connection to the point that, like, as we were getting older, there was a time when she was visiting me in college, and I was in my dorm, and I went into the bathroom down the hall, was taking a shower, and I was in the middle of the shower and had this powerful, compelling knowing that something was wrong with her. And I knew she was afraid. That's what it was. And I threw on a towel, ran down the hall, came into my room, and she was terrified. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And she, explained like somebody was trying to break into the dorm, a bunch of stupid fraternity boys, and she had gotten terrified. And it was after, we kind of did the caretaking for that and went over, and she said, wait, how did you know something was wrong with me? And I said, oh, I don't know. I have no idea. It was just so normal for us that I never could dissect the way in which it was happening. It was just always happening. And, things were happening in my family. My mom wanted to tell us that our dog died. And my sister and I got into the car, and she was like, girls, I have something to tell you. And our dog wasn't sick, nothing, And you could say, oh, it's understandable. Something big is coming when a parent says that. But my sister had no idea where we were going with that. And I blurted out, I started crying. I immediately, as if in time, I had found out 5 minutes before. And I said, oh my God, Missy died and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, how did you know that? So it's just like a whole series of those little moments of like, I felt like sometimes I would get information 10 minutes ahead, I was just on some sort of like telegraph or something. So those were just like normal punctuations. And then one day a girlfriend said to me, when I was, God, how old was I? I was probably late 30s, 40s. Hey, there's a school around here. I live in Connecticut. And she's like, there's a church that's offering classes in mediumship. What a hoot, let's go. And I was like, I don't know what that is.
You're definitely not in the South.
I know. And to the point earlier, a church was offering it. So I had to learn, open my brain and say, there are churches that do this. They exist for this purpose. I had zero idea. And so we sat in the basement of this cool church in Connecticut, in Fairfield County of all places. If you knew where I live, you'd be like, really? And like every Wednesday night for 12 weeks, we got together and they gave us a textbook that they had printed and bound. And it was like a legit class taught with like all seriousness. And it changed everything for me. I was like, this is real. And it was taught by the minister of the church. and who had like legit credentials and would deliver messages in the church. And it just blew my mind that this existed right under my nose and that people took it seriously. There was none of this energy of like, he, we do this, but we know it's silly. Let's have cocktails and do something else. It was like going to school. We sat down, we came prepared, we had homework, we had reading, and we had to do psychic hygiene is the way I would describe it. And it blew my mind. And I thought, what am I doing here? These all, they went around the room and everybody was describing their experience, how they got there. And they all had these experiences they knew about, and they had these skills that I had none. I was thinking, I'm not even remotely psychic or know what to do. And I was going to leave. And my girlfriend was like, let's just stay. We need a change of pace. And I was like, okay. And so the very first thing he did is put us in a circle and put he said, I'm just going to stick something in this giant padded envelope and I'm going to hand it to everybody, hold it for 2 seconds, pass it on. And then I want you to give me 3 pieces of evidence about what's inside the envelope. Didn't teach us how to do that. Just
That's
said,
like remote viewing.
What's that?
That's like remote viewing.
It is. And he was later teaching us that. And I didn't know that was a thing. Never heard about it. And so I got the envelope and I was like, I don't know how to do this. And the part of the teaching was like, yes, you do. It's an expectation that and you just have to deliver whatever you get. And so I gave him 3 pieces of evidence. You were supposed to give him a gender, something about a shape. Like he asked us 3 ways to offer things. And so I felt like I was just guessing. I didn't know where it was coming from. And out of the group of 20 people, I was the only one who got the item right. It turned out I said male, purple, and it's a circle. And it turned out to be his ring. And he was like, my favorite color. And so it was that moment of affirmation was so important for me thinking, laying down tracks of like, maybe I can do this. And I think that's what shifted in my adult life to thinking this is something valuable, valid, credible, teachable, learnable, and I can do. And I think that was like right around the time where everything started shifting for me. And I started waking up and having these like spontaneous, I don't know what. We talked about that last time. I still don't quite know what to talk about, how you describe that.
So I just actually want to say something about you and your sister. For people who struggle, if they hear you say that, maybe they're like, yeah, right, whatever. It shouldn't be difficult for people. I mean, there are the studies on twins and their psychic connection there's tons of information out there. So this isn't as foreign to people as they think that it is.
Right.
When there are studies on this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I love that you discovered the psychic connection between your sister, and that you cultivated it. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we should be doing. As far as the mediumship goes, or in terms of like just the remote viewing, the government uses remote viewing. They used it for allegedly 20 years and then stopped, but I don't know if they actually stopped.
Blew my mind to find that out. I wonder if it blew my mind when I found that out.
Yeah, the reason that they stopped ultimately came down to beliefs. Mm-hmm. People within the government who their religious affiliations, it didn't jive with that. And so they shut the program down officially. I'll just leave it there. You can do reading on it. If anybody wants to read about it, and I might get some details wrong, so I'll leave that alone. But everything else that you said, it still, to me, aligns with everyday experiences that people have that they don't even realize. Mm-hmm. It's the thing where you think about your mom and she calls 2 minutes later. Mm-hmm. And that happens to people all the time, whether they are scientists or fortune tellers. Right. It happens to everybody. So I guess I would just encourage people hearing this and to by all means, hold healthy skepticism. Also, don't be quick to dismiss, because there is a lot of scientific information that can be used to back up this,
Right.
especially in terms of like energetic fields. And I mean, in terms of physics, I'm not even talking about spiritual. Like we carry information. It's just constantly kind of circulating and it extends out beyond us. And so when you get kind of even near someone else, you are immediately picking up on information that you don't even realize. And so then it kind of can become this psychic connection. And once you're aware of it and then start developing it, it's a whole new world, probably like what you experience. So I'm curious, you maybe experiences that you were struggling with, whatever you just referenced a minute ago before you stopped speaking. Did you want to address something there specifically that you were wrestling with before?
Honestly, I forgot where I was in that train of thought. What was I saying?
That's
That I
okay.
was dealing with, like, just making sense of it?
Yeah, I think maybe so, but it sounded like you had some follow-up experiences that you just weren't sure what to do with or how to
Oh,
process. Maybe it's dreams. I don't know what you were thinking of.
oh, I think I was thinking of, like I woke up a couple of times. Is it okay if I go into a sharing
Yeah.
of, yeah. So I think what happened around that time that actually preceded it, I was struggling with illness. I had Lyme disease and I was very, very sick. And I had just like, I'd been on the antibiotics. I was trying everything and I was getting sicker and sicker. And I had a knowing that I was going to die. Like, I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but you can get so sick for so long that you think your body starts telling you we're going to die. It was like a body level information. And it's prompted me to say, I got to stop these antibiotics. Even if that hastens it, I can't die this way. And so I turned everything around and started applying what I knew about alternative medicine and what I do to me, which I hadn't done. And I got better and better and better. And then around that time, something spontaneously started happening to me. I was meditating. I was doing everything I knew to do to take care of me. And I started spontaneously seeing auras around people and things, animals, items, people. And I started to think, because of my Western training, I was like, I might be having a stroke. There might be I have a tumor. And I was like having a lot of neurological problems with Lyme disease. So it made sense to me. And I was like, oh my God, this is like some new manifestation of being ill. And it wasn't until I talked to a practitioner, a really dear friend of mine who's a naturopath and a colleague, who said, I don't think that's medical. I think you're having a spiritual thing. I think that's auras. And I was like, what now? And I started reading about it. And sure enough, I was like, oh my God, there's a thing called auras and you can see them around things. And then I started again realizing this is something you can train yourself to do. And I learned more about it and started turning them on and off. And like, can I see it now? Can I, bring it to me, shut it down, and playing with it. And through that experience, like I felt like all of these things opened up new doors into practices, right? I guess they were thresholds. And then my practice was like a ritual that I didn't appreciate. And then I started having dreams. And one night I woke up, shortly after this started happening to me. And I started having experiences. I don't quite know how to describe it, but I'll bet a lot of your listeners know this already. I woke up from a dream into a place that wasn't here. It wasn't the here and now, but I was no longer asleep and I wasn't in a dream. I had a different altered state of consciousness. So sort of a liminal space.
Yes, definitely.
And I was in this, Tiffany, it was beautiful. I was in this, I call it a library. There was nothing about it that looked like anything else we'd know. But so here's how I describe it. It was this room that had no walls, floor, or ceiling, but I knew I was contained in it and that it was supporting me in it, but I didn't feel like I was floating. And then when I felt like everything was backlit, like if it's sort of like, the lights we use for Zoom and stuff that you can put on your camera and they have like all these lovely lights. It had that warm quality, like a glowing from behind out at me. And I was by myself and there was no beginning, middle, or end. There was no sense of space. And all of a sudden, when I went to look at the light sources, my intentionality of seeing it brought into focus that I knew it was a library, but I didn't see books. I saw aliquots of light. And I heard a voice say to me from below, somehow I knew it was below my feet, as if somebody was in like with me in the space, but I couldn't see them, hear them, or feel them, but I could hear them from below saying, choose one. And I just instinctively knew what to do. And I was like, choose one what? And as soon as they said choose one, I knew that these were like remedies. And I was like, huh.
Like healing remedies?
At the time, I didn't know. I was like, I just knew like information was being given to me, only what I needed in each moment. And I was like, oh, these are remedies. And I was like, okay. And at the time, I wasn't really that far into, sorry, I'm getting a glare from my,
You're fine.
thank you. So piercing my eyes.
Oh, that. Yeah, don't suffer.
I knew, yeah, I didn't know a lot about remedies or homeopathy or anything at the time. I knew it existed. That was it. Later, I realized I made that connection and they were like, choose one. And as soon as I got that instruction, I knew there were different, let's call them books. And so I reached out and I grabbed one and I looked at it and it said, it didn't look like a jar or a bottle or anything, but suddenly it had words and the words said calc phos. And I didn't know what it meant. And I was like, that's bizarre. And I knew in that moment that they were healing me. And I didn't know why, of what it would look like, sound like, feel like, how long it would last. I just knew I had that knowing. And then I woke up. And when I woke up in the morning, I remembered it vividly. I mean, like, you know how dreams are like hard to grasp and the longer you're awake, the more they like fall apart, like tissue paper and water, right?
Right.
This got more and more crystallized. And I went to my naturopathic friend and he happened to be doing acupuncture on me. And I said, I had the craziest dream. And I told him and he said, calc phos. And I said, yeah, isn't that weird? I've never heard of that before. And he said, that's a remedy. That's a tissue salt. That's just tissue salts. And he's like, that's an actual homeopathic remedy. You have to take that. And I was like, okay. And he had it and he made me up a vial of it. And he was like, oh my God, like you had some kind of crazy healing. And I was like, what? I did? I'm so blessed to have friends that like have a clue and can hold this experience. And I wish I could tell you, you know, I woke up the next day and it wasn't quite like that. It was this like layered, you know, fine-tuned experience of like just constantly hitting new plateaus of healing, you know, just like gradually getting better and better. And then I started waking up and having dreams where I shared this one with you. I woke up one night and I fell out of bed and I found myself on the floor and I was like, I don't remember last time I fell out of my bed. That is bizarre. And
just for further context, how old were you approximately at this time?
45.
Okay.
Something like that. North of 40. And I was on the floor with the viewpoint of everything on the floor, right? And looking under my credenza and my nightstand. And I was like, wow, I remember thinking that's dusty. Here's my hair tie, right? And instead of getting up, I turned to look and I could see my bathroom nearby. And I got curious about the bathroom and I was like, okay. And instead of getting up and walking to the bathroom, I crawled. I was like, what am I doing crawling to the bathroom? And I opened the door and my shower was on. And I started to get a little afraid. I was like, I live by myself. Who is in my shower? You know, like, am I forgetting something? Is somebody, you know, is my kids in my room? Like, I thought they were with their dad. My mind was going crazy and it was all steamed up. And I was like walking in closer to the shower, like, this is, you know, I started to wonder, is this a nightmare? What's happening? And the person in the shower, like, you know, wiped away the steam and looked out at me and looked down to see me. And it was me. It was my face. And I flipped. I was like, oh, I could see my whole body in the shower and I could see me talking to me. I was talking and like, oh, blah, 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 looking down at me. And I'm looking up at me in the shower and I was like, what is happening? And I started listening and I was saying things to me that made me realize I was my cat. Me in my shower was talking to my cat, except for it was me. And I was
That's
like,
incredible.
and I was like, I'm Bigfoot. But I couldn't see me as the cat. I was like trying to like, were these my hands? And I couldn't see myself at all. And then I don't remember now how it ended, but it ended just like it started, like poof, I had this like jolting feeling and then it was over. And I woke up in the morning and had this crystal clear memory of like everything that happened. And I was like, that's whack. And I never knew what to do with it or like, can you try it again? And then I had two more. One other time I woke up and I felt like I fell out of bed. And now I wasn't in my room. I was in an attic. I was somewhere else I had never seen. And this piece of waking up in a place I don't know has happened to me a couple of times since. It's super clear. I get incredible details. It doesn't feel like I'm sleeping. And it's a place I feel like my soul knows, if that makes sense. Like it's familiar in some way that my brain doesn't know. And I can't place it, but it's familiar. Mm-hmm. And in this dream, I was slithering around nightstands and stuff in ways that my body doesn't normally move. And I was like doing all these weird, I was like, how am I fitting under this chair? I remember thinking like, I can't fit under these things. And I was going in and out of things. And I was like, how is this possible that I am doing this? It was an amazing feeling. I could feel my body doing it. And I was like, this is fantastic, but also not possible. I'm not getting this. And I just felt like I was on a ride, like at Disney. You're like, okay, it's happening, whatever. And then all of a sudden I looked out and there were snakes everywhere. And I had this instantaneous knowing that I was a snake. I couldn't see myself, but all of a sudden I was like, I'm being told I'm a snake. And I was like, this is great. I never knew why I was those things or why was there a point to it, a use. I never knew. They just would happen and then they would end. And I was always left with this feeling of I want more, like that's like they just had this beautiful excitement the next day when I'd remember them is like, why would I want to live this life? Right? Like reading textbooks and doing these human things when I could be a snake or my cat, so then I'd try to like start falling asleep and be like, let's go, let's do it. I'm ready, and of course I could never like bring it on. And then once or twice I woke up and I was roaming as my cat in neighborhoods. I was outside the house. And then once I woke up and I was hovering above myself in bed. That was super trippy. I was flipped upside down. So I was facing down, looking at myself in the bed, and I was head to toe upside down. I was looking at my feet. And the moment that I woke up and saw it, I went, whoa, and it caused this like jolt through my body. And I felt like a bam. And I went and woke back up in my body and then woke up from what we would call a dream. And I was like, hello, everything okay? Like,
so what'd you say? I'm sorry.
I loved those.
Yeah. So you should know, okay, that I have studied shamanism rather extensively, academically and beyond. And I can tell you that your experiences of sort of experiencing being another being, whether it's, animal or whatever, that is a very common theme in shamanism and in sometimes with initiations where and there are a number of books. Michael Harner has a number of books on his first one, I think, is The Way of the Shaman. You can read similar stories in there. I have a variety of other books and I can't think of the titles now, but it's the same thing that happens with them. It's an ability And it's just part of this shamanic connection that they have to the natural world. I know there's a lot of tension and controversy around the word shaman. So I just want to give some clarity, the way that I use it. So the word shaman can mean a variety of different things. It can mean prophet, sage. It lots of times means healer. And every culture has a different word for it, but all of them mean the same thing. And what they mean is one who knows. That's all that a shaman means. And it's a knowing, it's a different kind of knowing than non-shamanic practitioners are immersed in. It's just a different, it's very different. It's as if they have, shamans sort of have one foot in the material world and one foot in the spiritual world at all times. And that's part of their training quite often, where in places here in out west in the Americas and even in South America, this can be part of their training where it'll either happen spontaneously. Like I read a story about a guy who was going through an initiation and he was following this old man who was a shaman who was climbing up a cliff, and the old man had no issue, just climb, climb, climb. And the guy, the initiate, was much younger and he was struggling to get up there. And the moment he got to this sort of ledge of where he was trying to get to, I think he saw a gigantic eagle, like there was a nest or something right near there. And the next thing he knew, he was seeing through the eagle's eyes, and he was flying over the land, and it freaked him out. It does a lot of people, especially if you're a bird, if you're entering into a bird somehow, and you're, I don't know, hundreds feet up in the air or whatever. So I just want to, I say that because you say you don't know what that means or anything. This is a thing that happens, and it's like some sort of shift in consciousness, which I would say the very same thing about your experience of hovering above your body and then slamming back down into it. It's easy for people to say, oh, that happened to me, but it was just a dream. It's a lot more complicated than a dream, especially when it has such a physical impact. I know what you're talking about when you say it was like you slammed back into your body or the bed. I haven't experienced it like that, but I have woken up a few times. And as soon as I wake up, all of a sudden, my whole body is now sinking into the bed and my pillow. I was raised up a few inches. That's happened to me a few times. It's so weird and a little discombobulating, but it wasn't frightening. And I didn't have an experience like yours either. That's even more pulled back. Like that's really separate from your body. So my point here is, I just want to encourage you to know that these experiences that you've had with all of this stuff, it has great significance. It has powerful meaning that's for you. And even if someone wants to dismiss it as, I don't know, poppycock, whatever, that's fine. It doesn't matter, because this is for you. The whole, everything you've experienced was specific to you for what you needed. Oh, and the other, when you say you went to this place and it was like a library, and then you discovered this remedies, that is very shamanic. That's a very shamanic experience where people will enter into a place where they basically have access to all these medicines of different kinds, whether it's usually plant medicine. And then they'll know what to do. They'll know which one to use based on, accessing this space in whatever capacity that is, whatever that means. At the end of the day, you got the medicine that you needed. However it was delivered doesn't really matter, because it was effective. If, however, you go up in this library and your remedies are like, hey, here's cocaine, and all things can be medicine, but it's you. This was your experiences to me align greatly with experiences that I've had, but also experiences that I read about in shamanism. And shamans, like I said, are often healers, and you ended up becoming a healer. That's your job. That's your role in life. And I love that. You ended up becoming what you were introduced into, even though you may not recognize these experiences as that. I'm saying, based on my academic research, based on personal experience, based on observation, I can see quite clearly that you were kind of born into the shamanic path. And I absolutely love that you became a healer at the end of the day. I love that.
Oh, thanks for saying all that. And I really so appreciate you not just like normalizing this, but also like contextualizing it for me. We were saying earlier that like it's just there's nowhere to go with these experiences. And I want to say, for people who are listening to this, part of my not coming forward, and maybe this will be true for them too, is like I never wanted people to think that I thought I was special, that I was like unique or chosen, or do you know what I mean? Like I felt a little nervous about people would think I thought I was like it was like spiritual bypassing, that I was saying, because I firmly believe like my passion is making people aware that they too have, this is an intrinsic ability of humans, and it's like everything else, it's a spectrum. To what degree you choose to enhance it, amplify it in your life and use it is a spectrum. And if it's important to you, like if you're listening to this and you think like it's touching a little piece of like envy or jealousy, or it's touching a little piece of like, that's an important knowing. I would invite you to listen to that and say, why, what's going on with me? Because that's a kind of calling that we too often work over. And I would want to invite you into the fold and tell you what Tiffany has done for me, she can do for you, which is tell you, you are special. We are all special, and it's beautiful. And why would you ever want to diminish that? Right? Like, why wouldn't you want to enhance it? You would want to, it would be like, hey, I have all of these digits, but I feel a little weird about using 5 of them. I feel like I should only use 5. That seems reasonable as a human. That's what I'm going to go forward with. And I'm just going to pretend these don't exist. Right? Why would you do that? Right? So I so value what you're doing and your knowledge base about this. And I'm excited for me to know, like, my knowing is every time I have stepped energetically towards this, it's opened the doors again. It's like an affirmation process. Like every time I've shared it, talked about it, or said like, I'm going to double down on it or work on it now, that it's like paying energetic coins into a machine that like turns the levers. Of course, I have to use a machine analogy. So human. For a nature analogy. But that's my experience, is it amplifies it. And to me, that's exciting, because these feelings like you were describing are amazing. They might have a moment of like, oh, what's happening here? But the bigger feeling is like, whatever it is, I love it and I want more, right? Like,
I love that that's your approach, I'm curious. Wow. So many of us encounter that. And because we are in the West, and with religious influence being such a profound part of just functioning in this society, most of us have been taught explicitly to not just ignore that kind of thing, but to demonize it.
Right.
Because and this is a really big package. It does include Western philosophy, and it does include religion. But we have been taught to, especially where religion is involved, that those things are evil, that it's part of the darkness, which is the feminine, of course, that the light is the masculine, the darkness is the feminine. The feminine forces you to, if you allow it. It doesn't always force people. Well, that's not true. The feminine does often force you to look within and figure out what's going on in here. We don't like that in the West. We're just machines. as is indicated by the way that we literally speak about the whole body mind. Everything is mechanized. And in experiences that develop intuition are cast aside because it's not measurable.
Mhm.
If you can't see it, taste it, smell it, touch it, or feel it, if I didn't cover that one, then it's not real. And that is absurd and wildly limiting
And harmful.
because we're not bringing in the big picture. And again, having the narrow focus of the masculine blended with the big picture of the feminine, that's the balance.
Mhm.
And there's a lot happening in the world right now. Everything is very chaotic.
Mhm.
It has to be this way. This is all just consequence. Things are just happening, whether it's on the planet, within people, or wars. This is consequence in action.
Mhm.
That chaos that we are observing, we can use this as an opportunity. We call it evil. These wars are horrific, and there are horrific things that happen in the world.
Mhm.
Yet turning within can change everything. It can completely change your perspective. So, for example, in my own journey, I'm at this weird place now where it's easy to criticize me if somebody wanted to. Why don't you stand up for this or be vocal about that? I don't have to. I'm just observing,
Mhm.
and I'm watching things unfold, and it doesn't impact me. It doesn't like destroy my life, or I don't get upset about it, but that doesn't mean I don't care.
Mhm.
It's just that I have gone inward to such a degree at this point that all this other stuff, I understand some of the superficiality of it. I'm not elevating myself by any means. It has taken, it almost cost me my life to get to this point. Anyway, I guess ultimately what I'm saying, I don't know what I'm ultimately saying. I'm just so grateful that you, a woman of science, is willing to speak about these experiences without the fear, because that's what we do. We're afraid of it. So we not just dismiss it, we demonize the person who spoke it, which is ridiculous.
Right. We
So thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for having the courage to share this with me, because I have to tell you, I have a lot of experiences that are extraordinary. I am not ready to talk about them yet. It's just not time. But the time will come. And so in the meantime, I just want to continue normalizing them. But as you said, also recognizing that they are special. They're profound experiences. And if you're having this is significant. It is significant for your life. It's significant for everyone you know. It's significant for the planet. And I'm not exaggerating. I'll write about that some other time. But anyway, do you have any other stories that you wanted to share with us before we close?
I have so many, and it's such joy to be able to share them. Like, I feel this pressure to I want to tell you every single one.
Well, we can do a part 2 and 3 another time.
Okay, I'm totally for that. It's funny that you said that, because for a long time I had some sexual abuse in my history, and I also felt that there was a similar relationship about not being ready to share those things. They're vulnerable in the same way, and they're precious, those experiences, in the same way. And I really honor there is a timeline and a pacing about those things. And I'm so grateful to you for allowing me to feel joyful and excited about sharing this. It feels really nice to, I don't, in my community, I'm interested to see when I share this, there's going to be a lot of people who are like, what's that now?
You're
it'll
a
be
physician assistant, you say?
yeah, right. Spending a lot of money with you to do very Western things. Are you still capable of that?
Right.
And I think it's important for me in my personal growth to start knitting those two things together in a more transparent way, to my community, because again, like I know I need to pay that currency energetically if I want this to grow. And I've decided this is why I'm here. Like this energy leading this way for other people, like I live for teaching this to other people and just holding this possibility for my patients and clientele that you can do this healing work. You can have healing experiences. You can heal yourself.
Yes.
Like the incredible literature on that. I did my thesis on that one together. And, I thought I knew so much about it, but having that really rich time of a year of just deep dive digging, I was like, my God, even the evidence is here. Like we were discussing off camera, there is actual Western evidence to substantiate these claims, but we tend to see them through a really narrow pinhole and to dismiss those. So yeah, my mission is like, I want to work with the people who want to do this work and who want to trust me in my knowing and allow me to trust them in their knowing. I think like that's so healing that we affirm you have a knowing, what's it telling you?
Yeah.
And be able to share that place. So yeah, the last thing I do want to share with you today is that I want to give a shout out to holotropic breathwork. I'm now doing a certificate in psychedelic assisted therapy because I just love learning and useless certificates, apparently. I'm hoping
not
this
useless.
one use.
It's not useless.
But, there's a big movement underway in the United States it's kind of a homecoming for these more indigenous plants to have a reunification is what I would call it. There's a lot of controversy about what we should even call it. And, do we have the rights to be using indigenous, I would say, technologies? That's a very like Western way of putting it. Setting that all aside for a moment, we are really focusing state by state, Oregon's out there, Washington, decriminalizing and then legalizing psilocybin, ayahuasca, right? Ketamine, MDMA, all of these wonderful healing modalities. In that same group, as you hear more about this, is holotropic breath work. And it's something, I'm really passionate about, like, use the tools you already have. Your breath, you mentioned it earlier, which is what triggered my memory of this. Going in, deep dive in is, I think, the most important thing that you can do. So when you're sitting on the sidelines and going inward, that is the most effective outward action you can have. And when I did a retreat at Kripalu, again, not knowing, a girlfriend was like, I love this, come with me. And I was like, okay, I could use a weekend off working on myself. And I had the most profound experience. They work you for a couple of days on your energy body, getting you ready and practicing short periods of breath work and, longer periods of meditation until you can have you're basically, they bring in tons of people to assist you. You're in a group of 5 people with one leader, and the entire room of 50, 100 people are doing it simultaneously. And you're all working on a continuous breath. It's called a holotropic breath. It's a cycle of breath without, there's a piece of hyperventilation that happens with it. And it takes a little practice, but wowee, if I can encourage people to say, it doesn't have to be external to you. It doesn't have to be a plant. You don't have to trip. It doesn't have to be psychedelic. You could lay down in your backyard. I encourage you to get outside in nature, where I am certain the key to this ability lies. Reconnect to nature and reconnect to your breath, which is your birthright, and let your body's own natural ability to tripolate fantastic just be unleashed. It was the most profound, life-changing experience for me. So in short, when I did it, at first I was thinking, I was conscious enough through that I was like, nothing's really happening. I was hearing people sobbing and laughing and having these incredible releases. And, obviously it felt like I could see their minds were like, shh, and mine was sort of, and I was like, I'm broken. I'm not doing this right. It's not working. And then right towards the end, one of the leaders of the program came by and I felt his energy. And all of a sudden I knew I was in the presence of Jesus Christ. So again, my religious model.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So that figurehead was available to me. But in that moment, I've never been particularly religious. I knew this had nothing to do with religion, that I was
Right.
a sense of Christ consciousness. And sorry, it's going to make me cry.
That's okay.
It changed everything for me. And I left that, it's pointless for me to tell you what my experience was in that moment, because it won't sound like anything. It will just, but the feeling I had, I felt broken open, like something in my, like, let's call it my heart chakra. It broke open, and bless these people for knowing how to hold space for this so well. They did integration afterwards, and that allowed me to, I was so upset that it was over and that I couldn't feel that feeling again. And they said something so important to me, because we were in groups all like, what do you think, sharing experiences. And I was tearfully saying, I can't live like this now anymore, knowing what I know from this experience, having that Christ consciousness. I'm resenting that I have to be embodied and physical and small and wear clothing. I want to like rip my clothes off and run out into the woods and just be naked in nature. And, it caused this ruckus laughter of everybody like, I get it, that's so charming. And this man who was leading the seminar stopped everybody and said, like, a hush, beautiful soul, like super gentle person, and had this moment of no. And he leaned in and looked at me. Of course, it's the way I remember it. And he said, you do that. That's important. You live it. And I said, I just have this feeling of like big love I have to live. And he was like, yes, do it. Don't let anybody change it for you. That's what you're supposed to do, is live it. And I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
But every day, like, it's, I want that message to go out to everybody else who's listening to this, because I know other people are getting that calling, that there's a truth in that for them too. And I invite you to hear that message that I got, knowing that messages are universal. There's always more than 50 people who can take the same message. As a medium, when I'm giving messages to a group, I think I'm talking to Tiffany, but 20 other people are like, I can take that. That message is for me too. Yeah. And I know that message that I got about that was meant for everybody else. So if anybody's listening and that's connecting for you, you're supposed to get it. This is meant for you. This is divine. You're meant to be here. You're meant to be listening to this. This is, oh, bug went in my mouth. Excuse me, friend. This is
perils of outdoor life.
Yeah. It's an initiation for the bug. Yeah. This is what is supposed to be happening for you. This is an important part of your growth, being here with us. That's why we're doing this. And it's, even though this is being recorded and this is a different time when somebody else is listening to it, in this moment, I can feel those people watching it. I know, like, I can feel the heart space of somebody else opening up and connecting to this. I know it's happening. Right.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And so if I can help anybody with that, I'd love to figure out how. That's on my new mission, is sitting with not knowing and trusting that I do know. Yeah. I don't know the details. I don't know how it's going to unfold, because of course I have this Western mind and a fairly Western practice, and I'm always defending my license and like, I don't want to run afoul of the laws and things. And I feel done with that. So I'm trusting that when I'm putting this out in the world, that you're helping me figure out who and how I want to be, to live more authentically, because I can't continue. That feels like a death to me. I just can't continue this small, clothed indoor life. It does not work for me.
Yeah. Well, this was beautiful, Benny. Thank you so much for sharing this information. Since you have so many more experiences, I definitely want to come back to these, and we'll do this again sometime in the relatively near future.
I hope so. I would love that. Anytime you want to talk, and if anybody reaches out and wants to talk to me in any way, I'd be happy to figure out what's next.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, big love.
Yes, big love. Thank you. And we will do this again. Thank you all for watching, and like and subscribe to come back for more, especially more of Benny. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, love.